Welcome to RealBMX Racing The Podcast. Today's show is sponsored by 110% Nutrition, Answer BMX, and BMX Connect. With a special shout out to Toby Henderson over at SYNDYT BMX. Today's guest is former CEO of Box Components and current owner of SYNDYT Racing, Toby Henderson. Toby, welcome to the show.
So I read something that you started racing in 1973. Is that correct?
I want to say that I think the bout page says 74, but I don't know. Anywhere around that time because you're going to start dating me. So,
so I mean, back then there was nothing going on BMX wise. I mean, how did this all start for you?
Well, how it started for me at 5 years old, I went off the curb on accident and pulled it off and thought, hey, this is pretty cool to be in the air for a millisecond, right? So I kind of was hooked at that point, right? And by the time I was 9, I was jumping every piece of wood I can find, building ramps in front of the house, jumping my sister's Huffy and tweaking the crap out of that thing. But at 12 years old, we moved, or 10 years old, we moved. And it was a bike shop, Cerritos bike shop around the corner from me. And I would hang out in there and hang out in there and hang out in there forever. Finally, they said, hey, this kid's here so much, let's hire him. So at 12 years old, I went to work for a bike shop. Nice. And at that point, I just fell in love with the bikes, the freedom of it and all that. And so I think later that year, I was 12, they had a Hollyfield Park, which was about 4 miles from my house. Botima came from there, Tinker Juarez came from there, Mike Schmidt, then some other people, Steve Bimke, all came from that track. And anyway, so I rode my bike 4 miles, went and paid 25 cents to race with the flag start. And I won a ribbon like you get in Boy Scouts or something like that, right? And that was kind of the start of the whole thing, right? So we kind of went from there, right? Worked in the bike shop and for about 4 years and actually got one of the very first Schwinn, what was the thing called? It was a Sting, I think Sting. It was a straight tube bike, which had horrible handling and stuff. But I had like the very first one of those because the bike shop owner was a big Schwinn dealer here in Southern California. So he was kind of pulling some strings for me. And then, I went out and raced motocross for a while, high school motocross. And then,
high school motocross?
Yeah, so we had a high school motocross when I was in high school. We had Letterman's jackets, and we raced against other schools. It was pretty cool. Yeah,
What school was this?
Cerritos. Now, where are you from?
Orange County.
Yeah, so that's why when you said the time, I kept thinking.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm from there, but I live in North Carolina.
Okay, that's where I got confused. Anyway, so yeah, Cerritos High School. I knew you were from the area, but you're a lot younger than me, so that doesn't count. So anyway. I was racing high school motocross and was digging ditches and doing cement work and racing motorcycles every weekend, spending all my money on motorcycles. And then bumped into Botima, who was kind of a family friend or whatever, and he was kind of near my neighborhood. And he said, hey, there's this race out in Downey this Sunday afternoon. So I raced my motorcycle that morning, went home, took a shower, went out to see Botima race. They basically put up a track in the middle of a field, and he won. And he won $300. This is a Sunday afternoon, 1978, right? And I went, that motorcycle's for sale that next morning. And I went straight to Ralph's Bicycles. That's where all these names you guys probably heard from in the past come from. I went straight to Ralph's Bicycles, and I had motorcycle money in my hand. And I went straight to Ralph's Bicycles and bought the best BMX bike I could possibly buy. Right?
There you go.
All white spokes and all this garbage. Anyway, it was a good bike, and they had the forum. So it was 78, and NBA had the races at the LA Coliseum, not the Coliseum, but the LA Forum. And basically, you're 60 back then. To make the pro class, you had to win 16 and over, or 16-year-old class. If you could win one of those, that's how you got your pro license. So I went there specifically to win the 16 and over class. I don't think there was intermediate or anything at that point. I went there to win that race, and I did. Right. And I said, I'm gonna go make money on a bicycle. And I went to that race. I won it. Then a few weeks later, Botima talked to DG, and next thing you know, a DG shows up at my house, and here we are today, 50 years later.
Right? Just stayed in with it. That's pretty cool.
But that's how it all started, right? 1974 to about 1978 when I won something that made sense and it turned into a career. And of course, I think you guys know about my mountain bike career. That was very fruitful as well. So I raced for 20 years, consistently made money on a bicycle for 20 straight seasons. And the last season was pretty tough at 38 years old, being a downhill mountain bike racer, a World Cup guy. was got to be pretty tough on an older guy, but I finished it up and got the 20th year and called it at that point at 38 years old. So yeah, then I went to work. So here I am today.
So when you were riding everything, that because being from California, Grants was always in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Were you able to go to those coming from like California? Like your parents were like okay with you going to those?
Well, it's kind of funny. So I ride for DG, right? And we weren't really at that point. I hadn't really traveled out much outside. We went to Vegas and we went to a few things like that, but not much beyond that. And I remember DG was sold to somebody, and Jeff and I went down to San Diego and went to the new owners and basically asked them, hey, how are you going to get us to these races like Tulsa? How are we going to do that? The guy was too busy having a grand opening party than worried about his athletes. And so Jeff and I left that a little bit like, what are we going to do? And there's the DG jersey back there. But I was like, what are we going to do? And we got a call from Raleigh a few weeks later, just out of the blue, right? So Raleigh says they're going to help pay for us to get around to these races that we weren't really getting to by DG. And Jeff and I are like, and we talked to our parents and we're like, man, we're riding for the coolest company at the time. It was just sold, but it was still cool, right? And the bikes were pretty good. And here comes this Raleigh company, this old man's bike company, who ride for this guys? Who's that all about? But there was money on the table. So Jeff and I made the decision to take the deal. And Chuck Robinson was the one who kind of told Raleigh they were looking for two guys who were buddies that could travel together and could ride a bike decently. Okay, so there's these two guys that are friends, live near each other, and they can kind of ride a bike. So anyway, so we took the deal from Raleigh. They sent us a couple of checks, and we jumped in my truck I'd gotten in high school graduation. The day I stepped out of high school at 17 years old, we jumped in my truck, put a shell on the back of it, and threw our stuff in the back, and we went on the road, man. Right? Yeah, with Raleigh's money. and then a few months later, the magazine started looking for the big corporate money at that point. BMX Action and Plus and all those guys were starting to really start to ramp up their readerships and their subscriptions, as you say. Anyway, so we became kind of pawns in a game of corporate strategy and corporate dollars, and we're on the cover of magazines. We're getting all these photo shoots and stuff, and then, of course, I think I backed it up with a lot of wins. I backed up that whole experience with wins and points leads and things like that to stay in it. So it's doing my job, right? And but yeah, that took us all around the world. Raleigh did. I mean, we were in England, and in Australia, back to England. All this everywhere, right? So I think Jeff and I were probably the first guys to travel abroad, right? So to England, we spent a month in England, a month in Australia. Tons of stories about that, but we'd be here all night.
And how old are you at this time?
I was 17.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
And I remember at 16, my mom said, you can stay up till 9 p.m. That was my curfew. So at 17, I'm in England. And my mom doesn't see me for a month, right? So anyway, yeah, it was a complete pivot in my life and would never trade it for anything. Felt very fortunate and humbled to have that experience for sure, right?
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's every kid's dream, man.
I know, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it could happen nowadays. It's completely different, especially after watching the Olympics a few days ago and all that. It's definitely not the same thing. I was at the beginning of something, but I wasn't really one of the original guys like a Clinton or a John George or Bobby Encinas. Those guys were before me. Dennis Dane, names a few. Those guys were before me. I kind of came into it. I'm a little younger than those guys, so I kind of like Botima. I'm a little younger than Jeff, about 2.5 years. So I kind of came into it when it really started ramping up, when the sales were ramping, and I was able to follow the sales, which gave us the better salaries, which gave us the things that we needed to travel around. Right? And I had that same experience on my mountain bike, where mountain biking became the biggest thing. Sales were just going towards mountain bike buyers. So I learned as a BMXer, you need to be, as an athlete, you got to be where the sales are. Because if you're not selling anything, they're not selling stuff, no one's going to pay to go ride the bike, right? So when I saw mountain biking starting to happen, I really jumped into that sport. And actually, I think you can't see this big picture of me on my Verse mountain bike over there on the wall. Anyway, so I jumped in that sport and rode that whole lift as well, right? And sales got to be extraordinarily well in the late 90s, and we were making a ton of money and having fun traveling around the world, racing World Cup events. It was pretty cool. So I was lucky. I had two of them. You know, I had two full careers like that. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, all I think when I hear about all that riding is the injuries that you must have sustained along the way. So let's talk about that for a quick second.
Not so bad. I got out of it pretty good. I got a bad shoulder because I've been crashed on this thing, you know, way too many times, a couple broken fingers, and you know, I never messed my knees up. I never broke a bone other than my shoulder and my fingers, right? And fingers, that's all from just catching yourself. But today I have my wrists don't work anymore. I have no cartilage in my wrist. I'm bone to bone. So it really hurts to ride a mountain bike. But that's for 10 years of downhilling, my first several years with no suspension. And every day downhilling, boom, 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 and just, you know, on my wrist. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but you know, I think it's somewhat worth it. I should probably make more money. But now that I know my wrist don't work, but no, I got out of it pretty good. It wasn't so bad, you know. Yeah, got hurt way more on my mountain bike. I think a lot faster, a lot more rocks, a lot more, you know, terrain. BMX tracks were groomed somewhat, right? But mountain bike races, man, it was all natural fly into stuff. So, yeah.
Now, when you were racing, were your parents like factory mom and dad type stuff? They're all over you on it?
No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. My mom went to the high school motocross finals where all the schools race against each other for the winning school. And I got to the first turn, about third place, and at a 40-man moto gate, and some guy next to me falls, takes me down, and 37 guys ran me over.
Oh.
And my mom said, never again. And that was it. They never, ever went to a race again. Either one of them. For 20 years, man. Wow. So, yeah.
I'll say my mom used to go watch me race at the Orange Y when I used to race.
Right.
And I would come out real fast all the way to the first turn, and I'd either be first or second place. And after that, I think I would just get scared and I'd slow down and everybody would pass me. My mom was like, man, you're out there and you're in the front. But after that first turn, she's like, something happens. You just stop pedaling. You stop riding. You're out there.
Were you scared?
I think so. I ended up breaking my hip on the second turn.
Oh, that's not good. I think I had a little bit of a fear to win a little bit too. I think a lot of bridesmaid, you know, a lot of thirds and seconds in my life. You know, I won a bunch too, but not as much as Stuart and Greg. I mean, so I mean, I think Stuart Thompson's probably the best BMXer of all time. He knows I feel that way. I'm honored to be on the track with him, and I was honored to beat him several times in battle with him. You know, and so to even be talked about in the same sentence as him, I feel pretty proud of that. Right, it was a lot of work. Same with mountain biking. You know, Brian Lopes, Mikey King, and I, and them guys being 10 years younger than me during that time, I was to be in that same presence of those. Coleman, Eric Carter, which was we were the top 5 Americans for 5 or 6 years on the American team, us 5, right? So yeah, it was anyway. So to be with those kind of guys and ride that well, I'm pretty proud of it, even though it was kind of scary at first place because there's a lot of pressure for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Those guys, heck yeah.
Yeah, I always said I prefer to be in second place, man, throughout the race, you know, and then try to make a move whenever I can.
Yeah.
First place is too much pressure, man.
Yeah. So I think probably most of mine started from behind, and I had to pass a few guys. So there you go. But I just watched the NBL Grands, 1983 Grands. Someone remixed it. That was my biggest race I ever won. And what I love about that more than anything, it's just the amount of people around the track. Nashville, Tennessee. You guys can find that somewhere. 93 Grands. Anyway, it was the entire gate was all single digits, and which is what I think BMX is about. So in the final, the only one who didn't have a single digits, there's only 9 of them, and there's only 8 guys on the gate, was Stuart. He didn't make the main that day. So it was number 2 through number 9, right? I was number 7 that year. And everybody in the final had a single digit. And there's a picture of us all jumping into the first turn over some doubles and just single digits all the way across. And I thought that's pretty cool because that really signifies or really says, hey, if you got a single digit on your bike, you've earned it. And here we all are together. The whole system works. We pair down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. So, yeah. But you guys should watch it. It was a little bit different than this today.
Well, I was going to ask you, so you were more on the flat turns.
Yeah, oh, you got some stuff. Okay. Well, we put our foot out, right? We had to, right? I mean, that was the way.
I did that when I came back at 40, and everybody's like, "Everett, they don't do that anymore."
Yeah. So I was able to go through my mountain bike career and learn to ride clipless, and I rode clipless. So when I started racing BMX after my mountain bike career for fun, I was able to ride clipless. But yeah, that's what it was. That's indoor. That's where I met Jill, by the way.
Nice.
That right picture of that weekend is when I met Jill.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't get married till 30 years later, but that's another story. So anyway,
so that's the team Raleigh. So were you just on the team then, or were you already like settled in at that point?
No, that was it. I mean, went straight from DG to that, and that I think that's 79 right there. After high school, after our tour, that's Indianapolis, Jag World Championships, I think, and anyway, but yeah. I don't remember how well I did, but that's when we were just on the road traveling every weekend. And I think that has a lot to do with some of the success is that we got to be at all these events where a lot of people couldn't. And I'll never forget going to local races at nationals and go to some guy's town where he's the hottest guy in town. And you show up and this guy's flying and I'm like, oh God, here's another one we got to deal with. And he always seemed that local hero always seemed to choke in the semis or the mains, because now you're with all single digit guys, right? And it's time to perform, even though it's your home track. It's anyway. I always thought that was something really, because we'd always look at size up the competition and look at them, right? But that's when it was. I think that has a lot to do with this. Is we were riding so much out there, so much that we were just lucky to have that lifestyle. And that local guy was only riding his track, and he was good on it, but he couldn't go from each and every weekend like we were, right? He wasn't doing that. So that experience just wasn't there for the guy. And of course, the choking at when all those guys go on the line and all that fun stuff. So
you guys met at that race. What was Jill doing at that event?
Jill, no. Her best friend is Kathy Hanna. You guys know who that is, right?
Okay, I heard that name.
Yeah, so that was her best friend. So Jill was a scorekeeper. Okay. Jill was a scorekeeper for the NBL.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So we would see each other every weekend, and we, dated a couple times. But she lived in Indiana. I was here in California, and just had separate lives for a long time. And got back together about 10 years ago. Found each other because of social media, and here we are today. But we met back then.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Dating the scorekeeper, man. Yeah.
I think she docked me a few times. That's the thing. A couple times. I think I won. All of a sudden the score didn't go my way. Yeah.
So did you? I guess so. You were in the early stages of when the magazines were coming out too, right?
Yeah. So actually, I think it's over here. I got in 1979. I got Personality of the Year from BMX or from BMX Plus. It's over there somewhere.
Nice.
So anyway, so you can see it right there in the back, that guy holding up the thing. So that's when it all really started happening. The magazines now at that point, Plus and in Action are having competition, right? They're trying to get the ad dollars. So now they're really taking care of us athletes, are really promoting the athletes, are really putting this out there. Okay, if we're going to put Toby on the cover, Hutch is going to buy an ad, and and again, but I think we had to back it up. I think that there was guys who had those opportunities but didn't back it up on the track. You had to back it up, right, to pull the thing off. But that's when it really all started happening, 78, 79, and 1980. And just when Oz was doing a fantastic job with the magazine. And of course, John Carr and his great shots and all that stuff. So and those are my friends today, right, both of them. And I was in front of the camera between those two guys. And John with mountain biking, more than you could ever imagine. How many times can you hit the berm one more time? Let's wait till the sun goes down. Just jump one more time. One more time. Let me focus one. I missed that. Do it again. So so it was fun. That was part of the job, man. There's a lot of people think it was just all fun and games. No, there's a lot of work involved, a lot of travel, training. We don't train like they do today. We didn't know how. No one knew about nutrition, and we didn't know. We worked out in the gym, but we just rode our bikes. So we did just rode, right? So that's kind of how we did it back then, as much as we could. So
I was going to say the one thing that I like was the fact that when you I was a real big fan of Chrome.
Okay.
And when I came back, I was like, talking about the chrome frames and everything. And all the young kids were like hearing me telling somebody about it. And they're just like, yeah, we know, all you old guys. It's an old people's thing. And I was just like, what?
I don't know. We just came out with the titanium bars, and I don't know. I don't think I'll make a chrome frame. I think people like painting stuff right now, but I don't dislike it. But you're probably talking about the hutch, right? My hutch, that all chromed out. I had them. Yeah. That's all I wrote. It was funny. We had them because we traveled so much. If I had a painted frame, it would only make 3 or 4 races because it'd be so beat up in the bike box, right? Be traveling around. So we just had chrome frames, change the stickers. So Hutch made me change the stickers all the time. He didn't want scratch stickers. That was in my contract to make sure the stickers were changed, right? To make sure the bike looked good at the track. But yeah, we had chrome bikes because we just traveled all the time. They were getting scratched, they were beat up. These were tools. These were machines. We used these things, right? It wasn't like they were sitting there for pretty. We used them. So, yeah.
Did you ever race cruiser?
Yeah, that's my one championship on a cruiser. But yeah, that was kind of yes. I was actually better on the cruiser than I think the 20-inch. I think my results on the cruiser were much more. But then of course the competition wasn't as stiff. But I think it does people. I think it took a little bit from my 20-inch career because going back and forth between the bikes was a little tough. And I ran 185s on my cruiser, which you had to spin the crap out of those things, right? 41, 18 with 185s. Think about that. I don't know. I'm not a decimal guy like George, but yeah, spinning that thing down the track. Yeah, it was pretty tough.
But you're pretty tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6 foot exactly. Well, I was.
I don't know. For some reason, I thought you were taller than that. I don't know.
No, I'm 6 foot.
I'm short.
Yeah. Oh, you're not. You're not sure. You look tall and skinny to me.
No, I'm short. I'm 5'8".
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So how did you start like dabbling into, I don't know, starting your own companies like with and components and
yeah, I love the question. Yeah. So at 12 in the bike shop, someone had given me a Schwinn sticker. I went home and I put it on my mirror in my bedroom and I said, I want to make bike parts one day. Literally said that at 12 years old. I want to make bike parts one day. And I was focused at that point. That's what I wanted to do. But at 16, this opportunity jumps in. Of course, at 12, you're not going to, how do you make a bike part? You have no resources, right? So going to school. So at 16, the whole racing thing jumped in my way, and not my way, opportunity came, and I just went with that. And so 20 years passed. And then that last year I was racing, I remember going up the chairlift at a race, should be focusing on the race. I kept thinking about a stem I wanted for my bike. I needed a stem because the stem I had was crap. If I make this stem, I could go faster. And that's all my brain was thinking. Now my brain's on part 38 at the time, and my brain's on parts. So a guy had come to me, my old partner at THE Jeff, had come to me to help test a suspension fork. And I said, yeah, there's so many of them out there. The ones are really good. I don't know why you want to do that. But I just lost a race because I had to pull a tear off and I flubbed a little bit. I literally cost me about half a second or a second. I lost the race by a second, which back then, after 5 minutes, Mikey, Brian, Colin, and Eric, I were always on the same second after 5 minutes of running down the mountain, right? On the same second. So you can't make mistakes like that. So I made a mistake. I flubbed a little bit by trying to pull a tear off. It was a snowy, muddy day. And anyway, so I said, we need to make something to keep mud out of my face. For me, that's something we don't have as a racers. And I'll go on a little bit about how I think Box and now SYNDYT and some of the other brands I had in the past by thinking around that and why we were where we were and had some successful brands is I created that product based on the necessity as a racer, right? As a guy who'd been on his bike for 20 years, there was something in the market or something he wasn't being given to by his event or his suppliers, sponsors, or whatever. So we created a front fender, right, for a mountain bike. And the fender was to keep the mud out of my face. That's what we did. It was pretty cool. He designed it. We got this cool motocross look. We go to the first race in 1998, and it snows and muddy everywhere. So we had made 200 fenders for each of the pros that were racing pro downhill at the time. I knew them all personally. So we had put their names on each one of them. So we go to the race, and it's a mud fest. So everyone sees this fender on my bike, and they said, "Where do you get that?" I said, "Hey, if you go over, hey Sean, if you are whatever, you go over to my trailer." I was riding for Giant at the time. Go down the Giant trailer. My partner's got a bunch of fenders for you guys. You're more than welcome to have them. We made them for you guys, right? So I go up the mountain, I come back down, and there's a line behind my trailer, like 200 deep behind my trailer, all putting these fenders on their bikes. And anyway, so it worked. And that weekend, of course, is the first race of the year at Big Bear, and all the magazines take their photos for the year, like that first weekend, all the ads and stuff like that. So this fender just was on everybody's bike and every ad and everything for this whole year, right? So we wound up selling 500,000 fenders in 2.5 years.
Whoa.
And I'm like, oh, this is cool, man. This is like, man. I'm a bike designer guy, right? Anyway, 2.5 years later, it wasn't cool. It was cool until it wasn't, right? And no one wanted a fender on their bike. And we went from, 100,000 a year in sales of units to zero, almost overnight, right? Wow. So anyway, I learned about business that way, and I just started creating bike parts based upon my experience as a bike rider, from my grip to the tire, from the angles of the frames we have today, and some of the stuff that I think I've had my hand in creating, all came from 20 years of riding a bike. And I don't look at other people's products. I might do, but it's not how I make decisions on what we make. I think we make decisions based upon, one, sexy, and people want to buy it. That's important. But two, it's got to work, and it's got to be better than the other guy. Because the last thing I want to do is to make something that it's a fight for price. I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to make a pedal that looks like everybody else's pedal, and then everybody's fighting over price. I want to make a pedal that makes a difference in the way you perform on your bike. Then the price doesn't matter. Like the fender, it didn't matter what the price of that fender was. It was $50 back then, and it didn't matter. People were paying $50 to keep the mud out of their face.
Right.
And they were costing, I wouldn't say they were costing very little to make at the time, right? So, yeah, that's what I kind of learned from that. And I knew that was a THE product. And then when I wound up making the THE helmet later on, the carbon fiber one, I called Troy Lee, which is my sponsor, and said, "Hey, I want to make this helmet. It's carbon fiber. It's kind of in your ballpark. You cool with that?" And just, about time someone, comes and solidifies what he was doing at the time, right? And then I think about 2 years later, we sold like 15,000 helmets that year. And I'm thinking, okay, Troy's probably not happy with me. So I'm pretty sure we dented his market a little bit, but it was a huge success for us. The helmet was, right? And that, again, I made a helmet that I think was comfortable, had a lot of airflow, was light. It was important to me. It was nothing I had. I rode Troy's helmets all that before that. And the very first full face I had one of his was pretty archaic. He'll probably tell you, he didn't have the resources to build back then, the stuff that we needed. So, that was quite successful. Then I sold that company and started Box 12 years ago. Yeah. So
what would you say your greatest creation is?
Wow. Well, SYNDYT, I think, but that's another story. I think SYNDYT actually, it compiles all the years, 20 plus years now I've been doing this, compiles all my thinking into one package, and it gives me the frame I needed to bring B52, tapered head tubes, 20 mil axles, all the things that I've been creating over the last 20 plus years. I'm able to bring that into one ecosystem, and able to now offer something that between the box parts and the SYNDYT frame, something that's pretty much unmatched. There's a couple guys that are doing a good job with it too, that does do B52 and who have kind of adopted to oversized technology, and it's not just a handful of them. We have the engineering proof that it works. We know it works. The athletes know it works. Nick, Carlos, they all say this stuff works. Cam Woods, they all know that this stuff works. So for me, I think it's just bringing that all together in this recent SYNDYT thing to bring it all together where we're making it happen, right? So,
right. Wow. So, how did you come up with the name?
Well, you might want to tell him I'm in the podcast. Well, good question. So, I had 100 names, like I always do. Box, I had 100 names, like pick the name Box. THE was Toby Henderson Enterprises. That was somewhat easy. I carried that logo around long before I made a product. But No, I had a name down. I had this one name, and I just didn't like it. I kept staring at it. And I had the word "SYNDYT," 2 words, put on something, and I didn't know what it was 5 years earlier. When one of my employees, I SYNDYT off that. What's cinder? I thought it was talking about a cinder block, piece of brick or something. I don't know what he was talking about. But anyway, so I'm just looking at these names. I had the name. The graphics were done. The name was there. I knew I could get the trademark. I had the URLs. Just didn't like the name. I couldn't get behind it. I looked down at the word "SYNDYT," and I just wrote down, I just respelled it with the Y's. I like that. so I just kind of Googled it, and URL went right to my trademark attorney. I knew that this word no one's ever used before. I mean, it was literally GoDaddy says that word is available, which is unheard of to get 6 letters in a row, right? You know, 5 or how many it is? 5? 1, 2, 3, 6, 5 or 6. Anyway, so it's like, all right, so let's get this thing. Let's go for it. And wow, what a good choice it was on our part. I think people love it. Sometimes people don't get the innuendo, but I think it was a good choice. And I like shorter names, but that name just it rang a bell with me, and we went with it. And so far it's been really, really accepted well, right? So, yeah. Cool. I really like USA BMX's "SYNDYT to the first turn." Some of that stuff, right?
I was just about to say, if you watch any national, man, there's no way you're going to come away from that and not know SYNDYT,
Yeah. Well, that was important. We are the organizational sponsor now of USA BMX, so it was a hefty price to pay, but we're they call that, I don't know, they have a ton of other sponsors, but that's what we're deemed as, which gets us the first turn and some good ad space and some good signs at the track and finish lines and starting hills, some of the things that I wanted to make sure the banners were there. And of course, the LSG team, like you're wearing, that was important to get a team that's always top 3 and won the championship so many times. Then the Albies team, they're leading the bike shop, right? Points right now. The Biolabs team, which is an awesome team behind me and those guys. So yeah, so we're able to kind of get all those guys behind the product. Haven't shipped any yet, so that's a long story. We're extremely close. We just last week we got our final samples and pulled the trigger on it finally. Happy with it, but I don't want to put something that doesn't work. And the thing is the few problems we had with the first samples was just simply the technology we brought to it. It's not a Me Too frame. It's just not. Right. And when you make something different like that, there's obstacles, there's hurdles because of its differences. Right. And the 3 little hurdles we had were the 3 things we created with that frame, B52 and our rear end system. And of course that sloping top tube with chain alignments. That was it. The rest of the bike was fine, but it wasn't good enough to put to market. So we had to go back and forth to finally get it right. And it doesn't. People think, no, you want to make a change 3-5 weeks before you see something, right? And some months go by, right? So that's part of it. I had a choice of not showing it last year, but we did because we thought it'd be sooner. But until it's right, I don't want to bring it to market because it's just it's not good for the brand. And we have it right now, so we're pretty excited. So production's happening now. I have a meeting here in a while that we have every Tuesday night to make sure these things are on track. And so we're pretty happy with it.
So did you have like a time frame on when people are going to be able to get their hands on this, the public?
Yeah, about 60 days now. So they're saying 45 to 60 days. We picked we're going to warehouse. We're going to Missouri. We're going to be in the Midwest with our customer service team and the warehousing and stuff. So we got that all lined up. So we got about 3 days on a train to get to the Midwest once it gets here. I picked the Midwest one because I want it to be central. Right. And I wanted to get to the BMXers pretty quickly. And here in California, it's not the best place to have big buildings. So we found a really good team who does some work for us in the past, who knows a lot about bicycles. I got to teach them a little about BMX, but they do a lot of bicycle customer service. So they'll have a full team of people there to make sure that any call or any, text or whatever gets immediately handled. And any problems you have this team on staff all the time. So pretty excited about that. So about 60 days before they land here, about 3 days to get it there. And I'll know here a little bit later about maybe a little bit more. I think tonight we'll have actually a better date. But I know, Everett, you've been waiting for yours. I know I owe you some. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, are you going to do other colors too? Like, is there like a...
Well, when the first ones sell out, yes. How's that? So,
okay.
Yeah, no, I picked the color only because I wanted to be, we have yellow teams, we have blue teams, we have orange teams. I don't want to get caught in the middle of, and I did this with some other brands. I don't want 7 colors and 14 sizes, right? We have 14 size frames. Right. So you literally cannot ask a factory to make you 14 sizes. Almost they want to do that, and then ask for half a dozen colors between that. Just not going to happen. So I picked a color that I think would fit all the programs, and of course down the road when those start to sell and we get them out there, we'll look at other color options and stuff like that. We've pre-sold a ton of them. Really happy with that. We have Australia, France, Germany, England, Netherlands, Mexico, China. We've already pre-sold frames, Thailand, pre-sold frames to a lot of countries. So we're pretty excited about that. Yeah. So anyway, so 65 days or something, hopefully a little bit sooner. We will definitely be riding them at the Grands. There'll definitely be people having them, right? We just got another, like I said, a few more samples I'm shipping out to Drew and a couple other riders so they can have actually a newer one. But everybody who has the frames now, there's not problems with them. It's just they weren't just quite ready for the consumer yet, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice if they are ready for the Grands.
Yeah, they'll be there. Otherwise, I have to rent a plane, I think. That's not cheap.
So I had another question. Where did this come from? When did you want to get into e-bikes?
Oh, okay. Well, man, it's a number. No, I have some pretty big plans for that. So let's just leave it there. No, that for me, it was Stasic, kind of like, I saw them at the track and all that, and I have an experience with e-bikes. So I started racing e-bikes in around 2000. I don't know, about 17, I think. When did I start? Anyway, I had a factory ride with Fantic e-bikes, mountain bikes. And I was racing e-bikes, not professionally. I wasn't really making money, but at 50 plus years old, I had a factory ride with Fantic out of Italy, and I was racing, traveling around doing the Boogaloo trail races, and I got all into it, man. And I was doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden, all the cross country kids show up, and then as soon as they showed up, us fat guys, it was over, right? Because once they found out about this new sport, I was kind of in the beginning. I thought I was gonna have a third chance. I'd have a third chance at this, right? And then as soon as the skinny young kids got involved, I couldn't keep up anymore. So, but anyway, so that experience on my e-bike, that experience of going from my mountain bike to my e-bike, it's just a fantastic experience to have that little bit of assist, right? And then of course, Stasic was doing a really good job with their sales and what they were doing at the BMX track, and I just didn't like the way it looked. Not that I think they're a great company. I just think I could do a better job of making them look like a motorcycle, which I'm a motorcycle guy. Remember, I started the whole conversation. I'm a motorcycle guy. Right. So, I'm a motocross guy. I watch it every weekend. So I created an electric motorcycle.
So is the plan to make it bigger for adults as well down the road?
There's a plan, yes. There's a pretty grand plan to how we're gonna to push these and put them out there. And it's the problem with me is, again, I'm working on something and I don't like where I'm at, and it just keeps evolving, right? Because until I like it, and I feel I can ride it myself personally, I think, and ride the crap out of this thing, we're a ways away from getting my dream, kind of done with this one. But I'm really happy with the one you just put up. We actually will ship around the same time as the frames. Those are all approved. I know a lot about batteries. I learned a lot about batteries, so I taught myself for that. Thanks, ChatGPT. But yeah, so we have for me, the two things that the other brand was missing was they didn't have the motocross look, and they had a battery just didn't last long enough. These bikes will go about 2.5 hours wide open, right? And they go a little bit faster. They're rugged. They're tough. They don't have gearboxes that explode on the other ones. So that was it. I just kind of addressed what the other guys were doing and try to do better and make it look better. And funny thing is, people are saying a bicycle guy made that one, but the motorcycle guys made the Stasic, and theirs look like a bicycle. So it's kind of funny out there that I'm considered a bicycle guy, but mine look like a motorcycle. But that's just my passion. That I love the way that looks. I think it's really sexy. It's going to perform really, really well. We know that. So, and the kids love them.
Is the charge time pretty quick on that?
Yeah, I still think it's about 2 hours to probably charge it. But the 12, 16, and 20 have different batteries, so it's a different thing, right? They're big monsters. And we have, actually, let me show you. I think I got it right here. I'll show you something fun. Yeah, I got one. Just happened to be on the floor. So this is a race battery. So this battery is half the size of the battery you get. So when you get it, you get a battery that's double this, right? But this was how to learn about batteries. So this is half the size. So what you'll do is it's a quick release. It pops off, the one you get with the bike, which is double, and then you pop this guy in, screw that bolt, tighten it up, and then you're good to go. Now you have half the weight of the battery, but half the ride time. But we don't care. You're on the track, right? So the whole point of this was let the kid who doesn't race ride around for 2.5 hours, and he'll be pretty much done with it at that point. Where the other guys have a DeWalt type battery, and it just says it goes about 30 minutes, and that was one of the complaints of the other people. So we created the system, but at the same time, I go, if I don't have a small one, these things are going to be boats on the track. So we created, and this is why it's red. It's called the R. R is for race, right? So yeah, so we created the system to
awesome.
Yeah. So now these things are going to fly, and this has a Panasonic battery in it, where the other ones have a little cheaper battery in them. This has a lot more punch on it, right? It's called 5C versus a 3C. Anyway, so that's a race battery. It's an aftermarket thing. You buy that. They're not cheap, but man, you put that up and then the things fly, right? So yeah. So like I said, I learned a lot about batteries.
Nice.
I like learning. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. So
Shannon, do you have anything else you want to add?
So I mean, how much does the feedback of your riders
okay, well,
play into the changes you make, to the frame?
Well, Miss Jill back here, she's been keeping the testimonies of all the riders. Okay. She's really into it. And we literally every single person who's got one, and my competitors are probably going to think I'm lying, but have gotten one and beaten their personal records. And we're keeping all the testimonies of that. What's that?
Of the people who
of the people who have the bikes.
Who
race, which is mostly the LSG team, the Biolabs team, and a couple Albie's kids, right? It's only about 25 of them that have the frames. Every single one of them has had a personal best.
Only the people who have timed themselves.
All the people that time themselves.
Some don't time themselves.
Well, some of them, okay. All the people have timed themselves.
Before and after.
Before and after who got the frames have now come back to us and said, and shown Jill, hey, here's just what we're doing. Here's where we're at. Some of the
Drew.
like Drew is one of them. Skittles is one of them. Newton's one of them who have come back and said, Eliza, Cole, all of them have come back and said, Nate Lloyd have come back and said, hey, bike's faster. We feel it. It's the stiffness. It's the whole technology. It's the B52. It's the 20 mil rear end. It's the fat chainstays. It's the sloping top tube. I mean, love it or hate it. 99% of the people love it. That 1% don't, whatever. I don't care. Right? I really don't care because I love it. So, but it works because that straight linear point reduces flex instead of going, instead of having a triangle right there. It does play into the stiffness of the bike. The seats are slammed anyway, so for me, it just played in our favor. The seat tube, the down tube, the chainstays, all these tubes are from tooling. You can't go and buy that tube and make your own frame ever. You can't do that. You can't go get you can't because we own all the rights to all those tubes. It's our technology. But all those tubes combined and the way they're put together is what makes this frame what it is. And so back to your question, yeah, we believe that it's a fast frame. Even Mackenzie, Skittles, she says that she likes it better in the carbon. She feels it. I think that she feels the aluminum giveness versus the carbon, but also have that same stiffness the carbon gives you. So she's feeling that. And we've had nobody say, I want a carbon one, yet. So I think that's been really good because carbon's really tough as a business owner to do, only because of the cost of the tools and the lack of sales. It's just it's a tough area to be in. So yeah, we're really, really, really happy with the success of the riders. And I'm pretty sure once these things get to market with a ton that we're going to move pretty quickly, I'm pretty sure we'll get a lot of the same feedback. Right. That's why it was important for me to make sure they were perfect. Right. So
yeah. Have you gotten a chance to ride one yet?
No.
Are you allowed to?
It hurts, man. No, it hurts when I ride, man. It really, no, I think the BMX bike doesn't hurt as much as my mountain bike really hurts when I ride, just because the position. But no, I didn't. I feel like I know enough have enough experience with my intense bikes and some of the stuff I did in the past and other designs I've created. I knew enough. I didn't really need to ride it. The geometries for me, pretty easy to kind of figure out. But I don't think I needed to. I'm listening to the athletes who are obviously way better than I am on a bike now. So they're the ones to really ask, not me. Yeah. So.
Okay. So, because right now all we see are the frames and everything, but you say you are going to expand and do other parts and everything as time goes on.
Well, I have box, so if box for some reason can't, it's compatibility maybe, but at this point, no. SYNDYT is SYNDYT. It's a bike company, so electric bikes are important to me. A bike line's important to me. We'll have complete bikes next year. We're doing a really fun push bike right now that we'll show at the Grands. A really fun one. No one's ever done a push bike like that before. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to do for sure. I mean, I want to create a bicycle line from this. This is what SYNDYT's about, is a bicycle line. I think box can support the parts at this point, right? So, and that's kind of why there's both brands, right, at this point. So, but hey, for box, I'm really happy with titanium bars, and so there's a new fork coming. You guys will see soon, and just really happy with some of the stuff that we're doing there as well. And the B52 is a collaboration between that. You know, you have to have the frame to make B52 work, which is our bottom bracket system, which makes this bike work. So that's why, you know, you need a component and you need a frame, and otherwise you really can't create. And that's why I'm kind of doing both in parallel. Yeah.
Nice.
I'll say this is a question I wanted to ask you. So I raced, I think my first race was at the end of 79, and I raced till about 86, 87. I came back just a few years ago. So I'm an older guy, obviously. The 6 and 7-year-olds, they all riding up to me because they've never seen me at the track before, and they all want to give me advice. Hey, this is how you need to pump, because they see I can't jump. I don't manual. I come from the 80s. We didn't do that, you know. We jumped, but we didn't do a lot of stuff they do now. Yeah. So they all want to give me advice and show me, you know, little tricks and tips and stuff. I mean, have you ever been to a track and somebody looked at you and be like, hey, guy, you know, I'll give you a few tips?
No, I'll tell you a funny story, though. Yes. Yeah. So when I was in my mountain bike career, I took my slalom bike, which back then was a 26-inch carbon fiber, small suspension in the front, rigid rear end, basically a big, you know, BMX bike at that point. And it was a slalom bike. So I can do something in Winston. I went to Orange Y. I hadn't been on a BMX track a long time. So I'm going up to the gate, and these little kids are pushing me, like kind of like they're trying to get in line. And they don't care who I am, what my background was. Old man, get out of my way. I'm getting in the gate first. I'm looking like, dudes, give me a chance. It's like I just started cracking up because they don't care. They just did not care who I was or what, until they saw me on the track. Maybe I got a little redemption there. I don't know. But I'll never forget that experience, because at that point, hey, I'm some old mountain bike guy. Even though it's top of the mountain bike scene, they did care less at the BMX track. Care less. So anyway, so that was my comeback to all that, right? They just want to get out there and whoop on me. So yeah.
And the way they look at you when you beat them, you know, like some of the younger guys. They give you that look like they never thought you could be that fast as an older guy.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of that. And I went to Paris one time on a downhill bike. I had a meeting out there, and I took my downhill bike, and they had a huge first jump, and nobody jumped it back then. So I took my downhill bike, sprinted towards the first jump, and just used the suspension to clear this massive first jump that you couldn't do on a BMX bike, and got some kind of like, you know, okay, all right, it makes sense, right? Which is some of what I'm trying to do right now. I think, you know, we should have a suspension class, because they definitely jump different than a rigid bike, but obviously not as fast, but they're going to go in the air, right? So anyway, so that's a lot of stuff we can play with and do, and we have to have the market for it. And that's where somebody like, you know, Box and SYNDYT, and we got to create products and create markets and create consumers who will buy the stuff, so we can, you know, pay the electricity bill, right? So it's not easy. Bike industry is not easy. It's a business for sure, right? So
excellent. So here's the personal question. I'm an older guy. I used to race. I came back recently. I'm light. I'm about 135 pounds on a good day. I'm 5'8". Do I need a light bike? Should I be striving to get a light bike? When I was a kid, I always had the lightest bike. I had everybody's 44/16. I rode a 43/16. You know, I could move my legs fast. I could still probably move faster than a lot of the older guys.
Right.
Do I need a lighter bike? Should I just drop gears? It's something
No,
I'm always like struggling with.
Obviously, you don't want to carry a heavy bike around the track. And I think you can make up a lot of speed through lightweight tires and some of the stuff. But there's a trade-off for me. Stiffness, acceleration, power transfer, these things. If you have to give up some ounces for better power transfer, then give up the ounces. And this is what SYNDYT's kind of about, and Box has been about for quite a while. We don't make the lightest stuff. We make the most powerful stuff, meaning that your energy gets to the track, gets to the ground, and gets to go forward. So if you have a thing that's flexy, take a flexi crank. And I had that experience. You know, I bought that expensive bike at 16. I had campy cranks on there. And man, one time around the track, I go, this is crap. I put the picture you showed earlier on me on the roll. I have one-piece cranks on my bike, even though I could have some fancy campy cranks. But no, they flex and they didn't put power transfer to the ground. So I ran a one-piece archaic crank with Schwinn BBs in them because that's what made the bike faster. I could care less how much it weighed. I didn't put heavy stuff on there, but it didn't matter what the bike weighed, as long as the parts themselves could hold up to what I needed them to do to go forward, right?
I have two other things I want to ask before we go, because
Okay.
I'm sure this is going to end soon. Anyway, and Jill might be part of this story too. For some reason, I'm thinking she might have been there. So 2022 Grands, right? You guys, you had a booth at Grands. You had the prototype frame of the Race Incorporated up on the wall,
Yeah,
right? It was just white. It was like a plastic frame.
right.
Me, a friend of mine, and one of our riders from my team, he's a 14-year-old kid, came to the booth. I reached up, I grabbed it. I was like, is this real? No, it's plastic. And I took the dropouts on the back end and kind of squeezed them. I was like, oh my God, this is super flexy. The kid came behind me and took the dropouts and squeezed them till they touched, right?
Right.
The thing snapped. He ended up with a piece of it in his hand and he just started crying, right?
Huh.
And then I'm not sure if it was Jill, but somebody was at the booth and came and was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. We should have had a sign up there. Let me just make sure. Let me get the owner. And then you came out. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
That somebody broke the prototype frame at the Grands?
Yeah, I probably expect that, but it was printed from plastic, right? That's
Okay.
That's what we do. We try to show the stuff off. We want to make sure people like the stuff, and we kind of show it first. So that was a printed frame, and then it's going to happen, right? And probably should have been hanging there in the first place. But if that's all we had, that's what we had, right? So I don't remember that.
Okay.
Yeah,
It was the electric bike?
wasn't the electric bike, no.
It was a frame? I don't
No,
It was
remember.
the Racing. It was the new Racing frame that you guys had.
He's talking about 22.
Oh,
2022.
Oh, I
Yeah, I don't-
remember.
No, because we would have probably been hanging out in the box booth, but I might have come out and said that. But
Yeah, you made sure everything was cool because he was about to lose it, man. And I was trying to calm him down. I said, kid, just tell them you're sorry and they should be cool,
yeah.
So, and that same weekend, I broke my ankle in the mains, right? And then I had a day, which came Monday. I wasn't leaving until later. So I was like, I got to go to the Hall of Fame,
Right.
I'm all the way out here. First time at Grands, break my ankle, end up on a knee walker. I go to the Hall of Fame. I'm around, I'm walking around. Then I hear somebody telling the story about, me, Stu, and Harry, we're on the gate and this and that. And I'm like, who the hell is this telling a story like that? And I come around the corner and you're standing there getting interviewed by some guy holding a cell phone. So we actually met. I don't know if you remember, I was the guy in the knee walker walking through the Hall of Fame. It was just 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And then you said something about do you know who Toby Henderson is or something? I'm like, bro, like I raced in the 80s. I know exactly who you are, And I took a picture with you and everything. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I remember that. I don't remember at the Grands, but I do remember you at the Hall of Fame. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Who's this guy walking around here? He needs to go sit down.
Yeah, I know. I know. Still limping around. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's kind of why I don't ride anymore. I've been pretty lucky. I'm thinking I probably should. Every 5 years, like I take a big digger on my bike. I fell at Frogtown last year. Got hurt pretty bad.
I saw
And
that.
5 years before that, I was racing downhill out here in Fontana. And I was using my e-bike to get to the top. And I was riding my e-bike as a downhill bike. And figured I just want to learn the course and I'll go get my downhill bike for the race time. And I was flying down the hill on my e-bike and it was just heavy. And I went into a turn and the weight of the bike just didn't like my speed and just G'd me out. And next thing I know, I'm on my head knocked out. So that was a pretty bad one.
Gee.
So that was 5-6 years ago. I got pretty messed up on that one. So about every 5 years, I hit the ground pretty good. So yeah. Cool.
Sounds
Well,
like
I
you're still
mean, I
doing
think-
crazy stuff.
I think that's all we got. I think we got pretty much everything. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
Thanks, Toby.
Signing out. Real BMX. Everett, Shannon. We'll see you guys. All right.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jill.
Bye, Jill. Bye, Jill.
Yeah.
Now I'll come out.
Now she's gonna. She's working. She's making all the money, not me. I'm spending it.